Hey guys, Rich here at RCINFORMER.com. Thanks for checking out this review of the Unique Models PC-9. The Air Force designation is the T-6 Texan II. I was pretty excited to get a hold of this airplane because it's the same manufacturer that produces the T-50 Korean trainer jet, which I've been flying for about a year and a half now, and I love flying that airplane. It's a lot of fun to fly. So I was looking forward to the next offering that the Unique Models putting out, which is this PC-9, and I actually love flying this airplane. It's fun. It has nice retractable landing gear. It has an opening canopy like the T-50 has, and it's just a super nice model. This is going to be a little bit of a preview and a review, as well as a building guide for this model. And it should ease the assembly process a little bit and take you in a few directions that the instructions don't take you to. Anyone who's looking forward to buying this airplane, or anyone who's building it, will find this review should find this review pretty useful. One thing I would recommend doing when purchasing the airplane is buying a spare prop as well. The prop that comes with this airplane is awesome. It's very scale looking, produces lots of thrust. It's great for speed and for climb performance. But the problem we ran into with it is at one point we went up on two wheels on takeoff, and we hit the prop on the grass, and two of the blades broke off, and we didn't have a spare. And if we had had a spare, we could have thrown them on and would have gone with it. But so we were sort of forced to sort of come up with a solution that we could implement locally here. So I also have and of course we put a two-bladed prop on there, which you can actually just bolt on without the spinner, which is kind of nice. Any two-bladed E-prop you can put on there. So we have a two-blade conversion that also uses an aluminum spitter that you can use if you want to, and we detail that here in the building guide. So I used 11-10 props, 12-8, and even 12-12 props. I prefer the 12-12 because the airplane goes pretty fast with it, and all three of those props actually pull less amp draw off the motor than the stock prop actually did. So anyway, one thing I would like to recommend as you're building this airplane, the glue they give you, the contact cement, you could get away with using it for everything, but I think epoxy is still stronger for the structural components. So gluing the wing together, horizontal stabilizer, vertical stabilizer, I would recommend scuffing the surfaces and using epoxy, and you'll see some of that in the build review here. And then the glue they give you, the contact cement, is awesome glue, and I would use it for the non-structural components. I used it on my exhaust pipes, little antennas here, and also there's some fairings underneath the covering fairings for the aileron servos, and I used them for that too, and they're perfect for that. Anyway, I have a flight review coming out on the airplane, guys. Should be out any day now, so stay tuned and check that out. Anyway, without further delay, on with the review. Here's the box the model came in and how it arrived to me parcel post. Taking a look inside the box, it looks like everything is packaged really a lot like the Unique Models T-50 came. Everything is nicely center packed and sort of suspended so nothing gets damaged inside the box. All the parts came individually wrapped, and here's a picture of everything removed. Everything was very well protected, and there's not too many parts, so this should be a real easy build. The fuselage is all in one piece, obviously. Two wings, vertical stabilizer, horizontal stabilizer, two wing spars, propeller, two dummy scoops, two servos for the ailerons, and one bag full of control horns and glue. My first impressions of this model are that it's very, very rugged. For EPO foam, it has a solid feel to it. It doesn't seem to flex at all. Real typical of Unique Models airplanes are the retractable or the opening and closing nose gear door. Will make the plane real clean and efficient. Just like the T-50, it looks like they're using the same control board for the retracts and the canopy. Real nice organized wire loom, so it should be really easy to plug these into the receiver. Looks like they put a little cooling port in here for exhausting out any hot air. It looks like here they have an external power source, a different kind. It looks like this hooks up to the balance lead, probably for opening and closing the canopy, if I were to guess. The detail is really, really nice. Pilots have a very good look to them. very, very sharp looking pilots, and they're painted really, really nicely. Also, one thing I like to look at is the center and how well they got the center of the spinner, so the spinner lines up nicely, and it looks like they did a nice job, and it looks like there should be just a real minimal spinner gap there. Anyway, nice job on the fuselage. Wings, the only comment I'll make, really, 2 comments. A little scuffing from the packaging, but not a big deal, just in one spot. The wings are super rigid. I'm very, very impressed with how rigid the wings are. And they have nice panel lines and everything all throughout. One thing that they've done, Unique Models has done, they looks like they went away from the hinges that they had in prior models. Like the T50, where it had the bullet type hinges. They used all like just solid foam hinges in here. They seem real nice. There's definitely no gap in there, which is good. But the elevator, rudder, and the ailerons all have this foam type hinge. The last thing is the propeller, and it came just the way you see it, like this. Real nice detail, nice shiny spinner. They even put the little Hamilton standard decals on for you already. So very complete. Should be a nice fun build. The instructions for this plane are fairly decent. They're in color, although it is a little bit broken English, you know, in a Chinese English translation or whatever you want to call it. But the pictures will pretty much get you through most everything in here. The reading of it is not too good though, so mostly you can rely on the majority of the pictures to get the big stuff done. About the only useful thing here is the CG that they put in here, which says that it's 2 centimeters back. From the picture's not a very good picture, but probably 2 centimeters back from where the leading edge meets the wing, which is somewhere in here. That looks a little too far forward for me, but when I do the flying of it, I'll get you a good CG and then put it in there. But anyway, that's it for the instructions. Like I said, they'll get you through most of the building. The first thing the instructions have you do, guys, is to glue the servos into their cases. And really all you do is you just take some of this contact cement, put it at the bottom, and then you insert the servos. What they don't tell you is that you really want to do 2 things. One, you want to plug them into a servo tester. This is a Turnigy servo tester, or use your radio, whatever you have, and test the servo. Make sure that you know, you don't have any stripped gears. Make sure both of them are working and you're not gluing a bad servo in place. More importantly, the next thing you want to do is neutralize the servos. In the neutral position, both of these servos should have the horn 90 degrees to the case. Now, in both cases here, the company sort of, or the Unique Model sort of threw you under the bus a little bit because they didn't neutralize these. Now, I already took the screws out, so with the screws removed, you're going to set these things approximately as close as you can get to 90 degrees to the case. And then when you're done with that, don't forget to put the screw back in. You got to put that little tiny screw right back into the middle and tighten that thing in place. Now, once you've done this, you can feel pretty confident that the servo is going to work, and that when you glue it into place, now you're going to be able to hook up your linkage. So anyway, hopefully this saves you a step, saves you from having to tear the servo out. It's a good idea to test them and make sure they're neutral before you glue them in. When installing your control horns, they give you two screws. They give you 10 long screws and 10 short screws. Your control surface is thickest. All your ailerons, your elevator, and your rudder are thickest at the leading edge, thinner at the trailing edge. So you're going to want to use the long screws at the front ones, where it's thickest, and the short screws towards the trailing edge on these 2 last ones. If you don't, you'll kind of run out of screws, and actually the screws won't be long enough. The short ones are not long enough for the leading edge ones. So long ones up front, short ones in the back. One change I had to make to my plane, guys, was the supplied aileron rods were too short by about 1/4 of an inch, so I had another rod laying around. This was actually one off my Hanger 9 Jackal, but anyway, it also reminds me too, make sure you guys put fuel tubing, okay, on every one of these things. The plane's not under a tremendous amount of load, but you want tubing around all the clevises, ailerons, elevator, and rudder, to keep them more secure. One feature on this plane, guys, that I really like is these little fairings that they gave you for the control horns. It makes just the finish of it look really nice, and you know, cleans up the aerodynamics a little bit. This is the one place that I use the contact cement on that they give you with the kit. It's perfect for gluing on this kind of a thing. When gluing the wing together, I'm going to use epoxy instead of the contact adhesive they gave you. You're going to want to sand all of these contact surfaces down where the epoxy is going to be sticking to. And really it's just a matter of sanding it with some rough paper and scuffing it up like you see here so the epoxy has something better to stick to. Before gluing the wings together, here's what the wings look like with all the surfaces lightly sanded down. I'm going to use epoxy. I think epoxy is going to secure the wing a whole lot better and give you more time to line it up with the fuselage. But anyway, here's how they look scuffed and ready to go together. Now before gluing on the stabilizer, you're going to want to lightly sand this down again, whether you're using epoxy or whether you're using the contact cement that came with the airplane. The other thing that I would suggest doing is to put a couple of holes, okay, all the way through. Okay, and these are going to be ventilation holes. You see I put about 4 or 5 holes in here. And the reason is especially if you're using epoxy, when you put the glue all in this area, if you try and push this down in there, it's going to create like a fluid seal. There's going to be a pocket of air in there. There's going to be nowhere for the air to go. It's going to be hard to press it down in there. So by putting a couple of ventilation holes to relieve the pressure, whatever glue you use, especially epoxy again, this will seat right down in there. All the air can escape through here, and you'll have a nice joint, nice seated joint. Last but not least, just install the rudder exactly the way the instructions say, and be sure that when you insert this, or before you put this in with glue, sand the contact surfaces just like you did with the elevator and the wing. When installing the rudder horn and the elevator horn, I ran into a little bit of a snag, not a real big deal, but both these surfaces are very, very thick, and the shorter screws that they provide you for the back two on the rudder and the back two screws on the elevator really weren't long enough. You really need a longer screw. Fortunately, I have extra screws laying around, and I was able to you know, put some in here. But you know, if any one of Unique models is watching, or Easy Tiger models, the little screws they give you were really too short for the elevator and for the rudder. The ailerons I was able to get by with, but you're going to need some longer screws for these back two. When installing the propeller, I found that this was a really, really tight fit. And I think what happened was they probably fitted this thing before they put this aluminum silvery surface over this. So just with a knife, I took it and I scraped away a little of that metal material. And once you do that, this thing will fit on much, much nicer. One problem I ran into was the propeller was quite a bit out of balance. And the problem with it is that it's got these two flat surfaces on it, and it's tough to get a cone in there to keep it in the center, to center this thing and actually put it on a balancer. So what I realized was the thickness of this plastic here, right here, is probably about 5 millimeters thick or so, and the metal here on the prop drive right here is about half that, maybe about 3 millimeters or so. So what I did was I was able to take a Dremel tool with a cone type angle, and what you want to do is you want to do it on this side, not on the back side, because this is the side that's going to where the prop drive is going to insert. So you want to make sure on this side very carefully with a Dremel bit or something that's shaped like a cone, and you're going to very carefully with a Dremel tool round that out as best you can. There's really no way to get it perfectly in the center, but if you can eyeball it and just get it nice and centered as best you can, and sand those flat spots a little bit, then you'll be able to take the cone and get it in there and at least have something to balance it on, and that should make the prop spin much, much better without the vibration. One improvement I made to the airplane, guys, to the wing here, is I put some packing tape along the center. I like to do a lot of inverted flying, and this should make the center of the wing much, much stronger. An adjustment that I had to make to my airplane, guys, was to the elevator and rudder servos. Both of these servos were not lined up 90 degrees to the case. In the same case, similar to the ailerons like we did before, you want to have both of these at 90 degrees, and both of them were really angled forward. In fact, they were both pointing forward like this elevator servo is now. So what I did is neutralized all the trims, unscrewed both of these servos, and then put them as close to 90 degrees as I could. Then you want to go into your sub trim, okay, and I'm using Turnigy 9X. You go into your sub trim menu, and you go ahead and you change the elevator adjustment with plus or minus until you get that servo to be 90 degrees. Here's how you're going to adjust the rudder. I went ahead and did that a little bit differently. To adjust the nose wheel steering and the rudder, if they're all on one channel, and that's how it actually comes, the wiring harness comes from the factory, is that you're going to take your sub trim on your radio, and on the rudder channel, just set this up so it's 90 degrees to the case, and also you want to make sure that this wheel is in the center, and it should be. They set it up that way from the factory. So with a centered nose wheel and this one 90 degrees, you're going to get an equal amount of steering to both sides. Now you can check your rudder servo and make sure that that's roughly 90 degrees to the case, and then go ahead and set the clevis at the rudder end to make sure that's all neutral. So everything here is nice and centered. A couple things here to note in here. There is a second servo in here for controlling the nose wheel door, and there's a micro switch right here that activates that servo. Let's take a look at it. Alright, very similar to the T50, it closes nicely. When you open it up again, a couple of nice features is they put some centering springs on the front of this one, which is a little different than the T50, and they also screwed the landing gear in. Even the main gear is screwed in. In the T50 it was glued in place. So definitely an improvement over the T50. One area I found, guys, that needed some trim was right where these front springs are. These springs were actually striking the front of this plate, and it was actually lifting this plate up. Now, each of these planes might be a little different, so you may or may not have to do this to yours, but all I did was take a Dremel tool and just shave a little bit of this away, and now I'll use the contact cement they gave me and glue it back in place. I had to do it because I was afraid this thing was actually lifting up quite a bit, that it was going to fly off at flight, and then I just would lose this piece. So anyway, check yours out and see if you need to do that to it. The Turnigy 9X has turned out to be a real nice radio for this airplane. The wiring harness that came with it, where all the channels were numbered 1 through 6. They plugged right into their respective receiver ports 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The only thing that I had to change was as I went into the auxiliary channel menu, and what I did is I put gear in channel 5 and throttle hold in channel 6. What this means is that whatever is plugged into channel 5, which is actually the Canopy, okay, is assigned the gear switch, which this was originally intended to be a mode 1 radio. So the gear switch is over here, so I assigned that to the Canopy. Channel 6, which is the landing gear servo lead that's plugged into the channel 6 port of the receiver, is assigned the throttle hold switch, which is actually this switch here, which in the US, this is what we usually use for gear, our landing gear. So by having them on opposite sides, okay, the chances of you confusing that while you're flying is pretty slim. You definitely wouldn't want to open your Canopy, okay, while you're flying the airplane. You just want to operate your landing gear. For anyone using a Turnigy 9X on this airplane, the reverse menu is as follows, at least on mine anyway. The throttle and the rudder were reversed, and the flap channel, which is actually the landing gear switch, is reversed. And that landing gear switch right here leaves it in the default position when you start up the radio. Down is down and up is up. Also, the gear channel, what they call gear, which is actually channel 5, okay, is the Canopy switch, which is this one, what we assigned to this one right here. So down is down and up is up for the Canopy. And also, just like the landing gear being defaulted in the down position, the Canopy is also defaulted in the down position. So when you start flying for the day and you turn the radio on, all your switches should be in their startup position. Now to program the ESC, guys, I put the instructions for programming the ESC on RCINFORMER.com under Warbirds and under the unique models T-6. The problem I ran into is I had to reverse my throttle channel, and initially when I booted it up, I ended up putting the brake onto the medium setting without even knowing it, and a lot of people may run into that problem. So the way that you switch it back really is you turn your transmitter on, put your throttle all the way up, you go ahead and you plug in your battery, wait for 4 tones, okay? When you hear 4 tones, bring your throttle to idle. The single beep means that the brake is actually activated. It's on medium right now. So you see I'll throttle up and it'll brake and stop. To get it off of the brake, you just have to repeat that process. Okay, you go ahead and put your throttle all the way up, plug in your ESC, wait for the 4 tones again, bring it to idle, you'll hear 2 tones, 1, 2, that means the brake is off and you can feel that it's not on anymore. And it's really that simple. If you want the brake back on, you just repeat that process again. Here's a look at the landing gear operation. Again, guys, they're using the same mechanisms they used on their T-50 jet, which I love flying, only instead, like I said, they screwed them in instead of gluing the retracts in place. Also, this whole thing is nice and clean, guys, so it's going to make the plane real efficient and get a lot of performance out of the motor. Let's go ahead and extend the year. Alright, very cool. With the exception of just adjusting the centering of the wheel, this is how it comes out of the box, guys. I've made absolutely no changes to this system. It works just the way you see it coming right out of the box. One feature I really like about this plane, guys, is they have once you route each aileron servo and then each landing gear servo into the center, you do the same for the right and the left. They all go to this wiring harness in the center. That's already pre-assembled for you, and then this plugs into the wiring harness in here, which is really nice because you don't have to individually plug in each gear and each aileron channel. It's already done for you. One thing I did to clean up the bottom of the airplane is to seal the wires up, is I added some of this top flight trim tape. I think it's called Insignia Blue, but it's almost an exact match of this color, guys. So anyway, for anybody that wants to know, it's let's see, it's Top Flight TOPQ 4106 Trim Insignia Blue. So that's the color you want to get that will match this airplane. Taking a look at the outside of the plane, you can see where the external power port is. They mounted it really as one of the balance leads instead of a Dean's like they did on the T-50. All you really need to do is take your balance jack from your battery and just plug it in. And that powers up the entire airplane, and everything will function just the way you need to. So we can go ahead and open up the canopy now and take a look inside. Again, guys, this operates just the way you see it right out of the box. I've made no changes or improvements to any of this. One thing I found about this plane that's kind of a pain is it's hard to get inside this compartment if you want to modify the battery tray or really get in there and do anything. So what I found that's helpful is if you remove the screw right out of this joint right here, and mine was in the center hole, then you can go ahead and open up the entire canopy and you can get in here and do anything you want to do, and if you have to change a servo or anything. Anyway, it makes it much more accessible. Taking a look inside the battery compartment, you can see the changes that I made. I just threw the foam back in here so you can kind of get an idea what it looked like. But there were 2 foam blocks in here that I just cut out with a razor knife, with my X-Acto knife, and it clears out a nice area here. Also, this centerpiece here, you can see I just sort of cut that out and took it out. That allows for a nice big battery to fit right back in here and shifts the CG back a little bit farther. You'll also notice right here there's a hole right in the center, and what that is that's where the wing screw comes up, and the wing screw is really, really long, much longer than it needed to be. So I ended up trimming off about 3/8 of an inch or so. You'll have to check with your model to the actual size you'll need to cut down, but you don't want it sticking up through here because it can puncture the battery. So you want to make sure you trim that so it's way flush down there. The other thing I did is just velcroed the receiver in here to where the battery compartment was initially intended to go. I also cut a slot here to put the antenna in place, the 9X antenna. It fits nicely in here. Lastly, what I did was I put a battery strap in there. I just wanted something to keep the battery in a little better. I put a dowel rod here and wrapped this strap around it down here. I glued this into position. I actually punctured it a little bit through this this piece of foam here, this foam wall, and then there's a nice channel on the front end that it'll fit into. I did the same thing on both sides of the airplane, but this just I glued in with the contact cement that they give you with the airplane, and that gives you a nice battery strap. The reason that I did this stuff, guys, was because they have you balance the airplane via the instructions at 2 centimeters after the leading edge, which puts the CG at about 9%. Most airplanes traditionally balance at about, somewhere in the 20s to 30% after the leading edge range. So I wanted to put it in a more conventional position. I ended up balancing it at 50 millimeters, which you'll see in the next couple of video panels here. It balances at 50 millimeters after the leading edge, which translates to about 22%, which is a little more of a traditional location. As you can see from the videos, guys, it flies really nicely there. Here's how the battery looks with a battery installed and the battery strap wrapped around it. As you can see, it's a 3600 milliamp pack, so it'll hold a big pack. If you want to use just the 2200s or something smaller, it will fit right in here, and the strap will help keep it down. You just may want to put a foam block up here to help keep it from sliding forward. Anyway, you can also see that I have the canopy mechanism all the way in the down position, so you can see that there's plenty of clearance for that battery. With the battery compartment that I modified, guys, I actually designed it to actually take this 3600 Turnigy pack. But it also accepts the smaller ones as well. With the strap and everything that I put in there, I have flown the plane with both the SkyLipo 2200 40C pack and this Turnigy 3600 40C pack. I seem to get a little more punch out of the 3600, but I prefer the bigger battery just because it gives you a little more flight time. But anyway, either one of these batteries worked really nicely with the airplane. Here's a shot of the airplane on the balancer. As you can see, it's balancing nicely right there. I put a 3600 milliamp pack in it, and that's what I fly it on. It balances right at about 50 millimeters after the leading edge, where the wing meets the fuselage, and that's about 22%. The CG will shift back even a little further when you put the gear up, just because the nose wheel actually moves backwards a little bit. But 50 millimeters is probably about the aft limit, so 50, maybe a little farther forward, gives you a good, nice, flyable CG. Here's my two-bladed prop setup. The spinner is a Electrofly E-spinner, 2 1/4 inch, 57 millimeters across, GPM Q4727. The stock spinner was 60 millimeters across, so it was kind of an odd size. This is about the closest one I could find to match it. The spinner nut adapter, I used a CB Associates 5222. It's a 6 millimeter by 440, and that's what again connects the spinner up to the prop. The two props that I've used were 12/8 and an 1110. The 1110 pulls about 33, 34 amps or so, and the 12/8 pulls about 30, 32 amps, something like that. So they're much less than the original. The actual stock Propeller, the 4-bladed prop, is pulling actually almost 50 amps when I first ran it up. But these actually give pretty comparable performance to the original. The original prop, the problem I had with it, the reason I changed over to it, you can see from this video here that the plane on takeoff, a little bit of wind was around and lifted the plane up on 2 wheels, and on takeoff, you can see here the prop just kind of struck the ground a little bit. And to our surprise, we lost 2 of the blades, and the reason for that is that what happened was you can see these holes in the prop blade right here, and what it is they screw these into the back plate, And the hole, what happens is both the prop blades broke right at that screw, right at that hole that you can see here. So there's a little weak spot there. Now the prop is awesome. It pulled, like I said, about 50 amps off the motor, and real strong, fast prop and good climb performance. The only problem is if you break one, if you touch the ground with it, you really can't obtain these locally. So you sort of have to convert to something that you can get locally. And again, that's what I did here. Simply, all you have to do for this thing is the actual back plate has to be slightly modified, and all you have to do really is just ream it out a little bit. It came with an insert, but I had to ream it out just a little bit, and it goes on place like that. The prop itself, I did have to use a Dremel tool blade. You can see the bit that I used, because I had to take a little bit out of it a little bit up front here. The reason for that was because as you can see, there's not a whole lot of threads coming through there, and there wasn't a whole lot of contact surface with the prop adapter, which is what this is right here. So what I also had to do is put one of the inserts here that came with the propeller. I had to put one of those inserts in here. I'll throw it right in here. So there's actually some surface area for this nut to bite into, because there really wasn't a whole lot. But once that's on there, and you also have to get a hold of a 440, a long 440 screw, and that all fits together nicely, and it gives you a nice package, and obviously a propeller that is a little more durable maybe than the original, and one that you can obtain locally. One thing I found with this propeller that's also nice is that when you're done flying for the day and you put the landing gear up, you can also take the airplane and put it flat on the ground, which you couldn't do before with the other propeller, because the props would interfere with the ground, so you always had to have the airplane on something. So anyway, that's a nice feature, is you can put it down. Again, it's your choice. Go with the 4-bladed or go with the 2-bladed, but anyway, this is my setup. Here's a great detail, guys, that you can add to your exhaust pipe. Just take a piece of black sticker trim and put the back side of it against the exhaust pipe here, and then just trace it from the back side, and then you can go ahead and cut it out the same shape and just add it on there, and it adds a little more realism to the exhaust pipe. Alright guys, that concludes this video on the Unique Models PC-9 or the T-6 Texan 2. I hope you found the information useful in getting your airplanes flying. The biggest point I want to make about this video is really everything that you saw in it. Those are the things that I did to my airplane, and it flies well just the way I set it up. So you can feel pretty confident in everything you get. Everything you're getting in this video will help you get your airplane flying, and it works, and works well. I've been getting lots of questions also from a lot of guys who've been watching my videos, specific questions about airplanes, and really that's what RCINFORMER.com was actually set up for, guys, was to help you get your airplanes flying. So feel free to leave comments or send me mail via YouTube or via the RCINFORMER.com website, the contact page. You can reach me by any means on there as well. Anyway, you can help me out, guys, by subscribing to the channel and leaving your comments on the videos. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.